Hi, this is Bill Cecil, and welcome to episode number 28. Oh my goodness, of my podcast series, Best Year Ever or Bust. The podcast series designed to help make every year as a teacher your best year ever by helping you help your students make it their best year ever, despite any and all challenges you all may face throughout the school year. Before I get started with today's episode, I just want to take time to thank all of you for being the hero you've been called to be. I started this way back in August, and here it is May, getting close to the end of the school year up here in mid-Michigan for many school districts. And I just know how tired you got to be. So if you're still listening, just thank you. Number one, for being the hero you've been called to be, to make a difference every day in your classroom. You've been running a marathon of sprints for 180 school days, for the last 10 months or whatever it's been. You got to be exhausted, but you have a little bit ways to go possibly. I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to just listen in and again, to keep it going. So thank you very much. And again, a special thanks to all of you teachers out there and educators that are taking time to share this with other teachers and educators. I just know there's some education leaders out there in the districts that are sharing these with their teachers as well, and that means the world to me. So thank you for doing that. Today, episode number 28. If you remember in the last couple episodes, I've been talking about my mid-year that I start after the first 30 days. It's really the third part of my phase, my rocket phase that I've told you about, right? And so this is the third phase of the whole year from about the first month on to the end of the year of keeping the mission going. And I'm using the 5-letter acronym TEAMS to tell you what my strategies were, because TEAMS is really what this is all about in my classroom. That is the bread and butter, seriously. I mean, that's what makes it special, unique. It goes back to that CDC report that I put on my website, on my resource page. It's so important. I can't stress this enough. I really want to just drive this home again and again and again, and that is that the CDC agrees with me, and that is that kids do better in school when they feel like they belong. They get a sense of belonging or a sense of connectedness, and that's why it's called School Connectedness for the CDC report in 2019. But it talks about how kids that go to school and feel like they belong, that their teachers and their classmates appreciate them for who they are as people, but also as students trying to learn, they do much, much better and run much less risks of not doing well in school, but also not doing things that can hurt their mental, or not only their mental health, but also their physical health by making poor choices outside of school. And so it's really important. It's just saying the sense of that you've got to take time to build that connectedness in your school or in your classroom to give these kids a chance to really breathe and feel like they're safe in an environment they can take risks in and try to grow as a student. And so this is why I'm so focused on teams, because teams is all about that. I've talked about the power of team. Go back and listen to these episodes, right? And the fact that you should take time to build a winning team and make your kids feel a part of something. And so I've already talked about the first two elements in the last two episodes of the 5-letter acronym TEAMS. And I've talked about Target Talk in episode number 26, if you remember. And I talked about environment in episode 27 and how important those play a part in keeping this going all year long to sustain it. So it's not just a big kickoff, blast off, like, woo, we're going to have our best year ever. And then about a month later, you're like, you've totally forgotten about it. You're not talking about, the kids aren't focused on it. They don't know what they're talking about. So we talked about how important those two things are to keep this going throughout the school year. So today, I want to talk about the third letter. And to me, this is I think a really good letter, because it's the third letter in a 5-letter acronym TEAMS, and it's the one right smack in the middle, and it's A. And I have it down as A is for all involved. All involved. And you think about it, this is a very fitting letter for this acronym, because that's what I want with you to be thinking about with your team, your actual students, is that this is the glue that holds it all together, right? It's right there smack in the middle, and it's going to bond you guys to it if you're a team. And so all involved is a big part of doing that. And the Target Talk environment, and then the model management and the service I'm going to talk about coming up are all important too, but it really is this is where you make it happen, is in the all involved. This is where you actually day to day create that environment that kids feel like they're part of something larger than themselves. And so I just really am excited to talk about this. Now, I will tell you, there's a ton to talk about, and I'm not going to try to cram that all into this podcast. There's no way I can do it. And again, hopefully you can go and read my book. It's Best Year Ever, It's on bestyouever.net. It's my playbook, the one I've used, and based a lot of these episodes off of. Not everything, but a lot of it, because it was my playbook. It's what helped me be successful in the classroom year after year after year to make it not just my best year ever, but my students' best year ever. So there's more in there that you can look through the activities section, through the teams section where I actually break these down. There's also an appendix with, the first 30 days, how to set it all up. So a lot of this is in there, but I'm not going to try to get it all in this podcast. So what I want to do is I'm going to start off today talking about a story. I'm going to tell you a little story. Okay, so just put your feet up, relax for a minute, kick back. Unless you're driving, that probably wouldn't be a good idea. So I want to tell you a true story that happened in my classroom many, many, many years ago that will help introduce this strategy for today, all involved. And that is, I had a student come to me one day and he asked me, Mr. Cecil, can I have my cousin come in to talk to the class? He's a U.S. Marine and he would really like to come in and talk to our class, our team. And I said, well, yeah, that'd be great. But inside I'm kind of thinking, oh no, but what would he talk about? And I didn't know how to ask that because I was afraid if he came in and talked about bang, bang, shoot 'em up type stories, parents might have a bad reaction to that. So I was a little nervous about this. So I just kind of said, that sounds so great. It's so nice he wants to come in. Do you know why he wants to come in? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, well, Mr. Cecil, I told him about our team, our winning team, and he said he'd like to come in and talk about his winning team. And right away, I was like, oh my gosh, bring him in. This is going to be great. So we set it up. He was going to come in on a half-day Friday. He was going to come in the morning. Kids were going to be off in the afternoon. We had to go to PD sessions. And this is how fifth grader minds work. They were upset that they were going to lose PE the last hour of the day on the Friday. And I'm like, you guys get to go home at lunchtime. I've got to stay here and go to meetings. You get to go home and start your weekend early. And they're like, but it's not fair. We're going to miss PE. Oh, we love PE. And they're really upset. So I finally said, okay, look, guys, I'll make a deal with you. If we can get through all our work before our guest gets here and we have a little bit of time, I will add a few extra minutes, maybe 10 extra minutes onto our recess this morning if you guys promise that you'll give your very best when our guest speaker gets here today. So you got to make that deal with me. And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. And we got through everything. Sure enough, I took them outside. We're lining back up. I remind them of their promise to me. We're walking in. They're like little angels, perfect angels coming into the building. And we're walking down the hallway towards my classroom. And I remember this. I see in my classroom already, the room is still, the lights are out, but there's a young man standing in the front of the classroom, and he looks kind of lost, like his head's kind of down. He's just he's standing in the dark. He didn't even turn the lights on. I don't know if he couldn't find the switch or he just didn't know if he should turn the lights on, but he's standing in there and he just kind of looks uncomfortable. And he's standing right in the front of the classroom, and I notice he has his dress blues on, and he looks sharp. He looks like a puppy dog, though he's only like 18, 19 years old. I mean, he really was young, but he's dressed out in his decked out in his uniform blues for the Marines, and he just looked really sharp. But sure enough, as we're walking in, the kids are walking in just like I asked. As soon as they see him in the room, they forgot their promise to me, and they start running towards this U.S. Marine standing in my classroom, and they're making a lot of noise, like they're excited. And as I'm walking in, I'm trying to follow them to get them to calm down, I see him take 2 steps backwards as they start to approach him. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got a U.S. Marine retreating in my classroom. So what I do is I go running in and I get between the students and him, and I say, guys, sit down. And I look back at him and I say, I got your back, buddy. You're all right. You'll be fine. And I had them all sit down and I say, you'll be fine now. You're good to go. Okay, ready? So as I start to introduce him, I'm thinking, there's no way on a half-day Friday, these kids, just the way they behave just now, they're going to eat them alive. And I'm really stressed out about this because usually that doesn't happen when I have a guest speaker. And he just doesn't look like he's up for the challenge because of the way he's kind of looking down. He was taking 2 steps back. But sure enough, he proves me wrong 2 seconds into his conversation. I introduce him. He stands up. The kids clap. And right away, right before us, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He transformed right before all of us. He all of a sudden was standing tall. His shoulders went back. His chest came out. He looked so poised and confident. And he looked so just like you don't mess with him. He didn't look threatening, but he just looked like somebody you wouldn't mess with. He just looked so proud and so determined. And he's standing there owning his space. And he starts talking to the kids. And he says, I want to thank you for having me come in. And I really want to talk about 2 things that are important to me today. And I won't give you his whole presentation, but I'll sum up the first one. He was talking about how being in the Marines, he got homesick at first. He was away from home, traveling, sometimes even across the ocean. And he'd be away from home for many, many months at a time. And he missed his family and his friends. And so he would be out and about once in a while. But he'd run into another Marine, and he'd always get excited. He'd walk right up to him and say, hey, how you doing? My name is, what's your name? And they would start like they were old buddies just talking. And he said this never failed. Wherever he he'd go and run into another Marine. It's like it didn't matter where it was, when it was, they would instantly bond. He said it was like you just instantly became close friends. He said, the only way I can describe it, it's like a brotherhood. It just felt really good. And so that helped me get through my period of being homesick. I had the guys that I was, my troop that I was with. But when I'm out and about on weekends or on leave or whatever, and I can't go home, this helped me get through it. And he said, it's just a really good feeling, that brotherhood. And right away I thought, man, that's what we need in education. Wouldn't it be great in education? Seriously. If you could go up to any teacher, any custodian, secretary, bus driver, it doesn't matter. Anybody involved in it, superintendent, it doesn't matter. Anybody involved in education. And right away you have that bond, right? It doesn't have to be from your school. It could be a private school, public school, it doesn't matter. But we have that bond of knowing we're doing such important work that we automatically have a connection. And, hey, what's your name? Hey, it's good to meet you. It's nice to meet you. And right away you're bonding, right? We're part of that brotherhood. We got to get that in education. I don't think we have that right now. I'm sorry. I just don't. Maybe certain buildings do, and good for you if you do, but I don't think it's running through our entire educational system. So I think that's something we need to do. Anyways, the second thing he said to my class was, he started talking about how the Marines changed him and all for the better. And he says, it has really made a difference in my life. He said, the most important thing that it did for me is it made me more accountable. He had talked about other things, but he stressed this one a lot. He said, it made me more accountable. And I just interrupted him and I said, could you, because I thought this is good for my students to hear. Could you explain what accountability means to a U.S. Marine? And he looks at me and he goes, oh, absolutely. And he looks at the students and he goes, in the Marines, you never, ever leave another Marine in a bad situation or struggling or left behind. It doesn't matter if they're wounded. It doesn't matter if they're dead. You go and you get the body and you bring it back if they're dead so the families can at least have peace. But you never leave them alone. You run to take care of them. No matter the situation, no, without any hesitation, you go and you get them and you try to bring them back because a Marine never leaves another Marine in a bad situation. I thought, oh my gosh, what a message for my students. And we talked about that later, about how that's what I'm looking for in this classroom. That's what we've been developing all year long in this classroom, is a sense that we're all connected. We're on a team, like he was talking about his team, right? That's a brotherhood, or a team is what I call it, but it's a strong bond between all of us. And I said, but you also have to take care of each other. And that means you're looking at, that's why I'm always asking you to help students out. If you see them eating alone, even if they're not from our class, or playing alone on the playground, get out there and invite them in, but be a leader. Be somebody that looks out for other people, and especially in this classroom for this team, because we're all working on our shared mission to make it our best year ever. And I've told you, we can't do it alone. None of us can do it without the help of each other, including myself. I told you, I need you to have your best year ever for me to have mine. So we need each other. But we have to have that mindset that no matter the situation, without hesitation, if we see one of our classmates in trouble or in need of help, we don't hesitate. We just jump in and say, what do you need? Let me help you. Yeah, I got a minute. I'll help you do this. Or let me ask Mr. Cecil if we can work together, or whatever. And you guys do that, but I want you to understand how important that is to hear that U.S. Marine say it and why we do it. So these are the two words I want to focus on tonight. I want to talk about brotherhood, or sense of belonging. Again, the CDC report, that brotherhood, right? And that sense of accountability. This is all involved, because if you're a part of a team and every day you're coming in to work as a team, and I'll talk about examples of how you can do that in your classroom like I was using, you'll see that every day they weren't just talking about we're a team. No, they were being a team every day. They were coming in practicing every day, working together, learning how to work together, how to solve problems together, how to rejoice, celebrate together, how to come up with new ideas, to brainstorm together. I mean, all these different things, how to keep everybody involved within the group so nobody feels left out, because that would affect their grade the way I set up my grading system, because I'm all about keeping everybody involved. So brotherhood was huge, but so was accountability. And that started with, for example, I'm going to start with accountability first. In my room, accountability starts right away. It starts within the first day in the afternoon when we start talking about what my expectations are. And I don't do it all in one session, but I talk a lot about what my expectations are. I want to establish really clear expectations in my classroom. that will be there for the whole year. And that's why 30 days to really drive it in, drive it home. Right? The rules and the procedures, if you think about that. I talked about that in earlier episodes. The team rules and procedures. Those are expectations that you'll follow those. You'll learn those. You'll master those. You'll use them every day. The 3-word success formula I gave them, right? Attendance, attitude, and effort. And the coin that had those words on it, they could use as a tool to remind themselves every day. And they're in my room, post-it. And I talk about them all the time, but I expect them to follow those, right? That's accountability, being responsible to know what is your role on the team. What do you have to do to help the team keep moving forward? These are my expectations. This is accountability. So I would talk about those things. I would also talk about diversity equals strong team. And again, I've talked about how winning teams need to have diversity in order to be strong. If we had a team of all goalies on my soccer team when I played soccer, we would not give up a lot of goals, but we would not win a lot of games because we wouldn't know how to score goals. We wouldn't have the people that had the skills to do that. So we could, protect our goal pretty well, but we wouldn't be able to score goals. So that wouldn't help us be a very good team. So we need that diversity. And diversity can look like many different things. But the way I talk about it in my classroom is it's simply that we all have different things to bring to the table because none of us are the same. We're all different. And so instead of only looking for similarities, which you do when you first build a team, like I would tell them, we all have something similar. You're all in Mr. Cecil's 5th grade classroom. That's one thing we have in common. And then we find other things to break down those walls that I talked about, right? Now we're talking about the differences, how important they are, because not everybody plays the same position on a team. Some people are built differently. They can run faster. They can, whatever. They have certain talents, certain skills, certain things they just have a mindset for, and they play those positions. But we can't all play every single position. And so we need each other. And that's how I would talk about diversity on our team is we have to dig into your strengths. So don't sit there and think you don't have anything to offer this team because you are different than everybody else. You will have something this year, I guarantee it, that you'll have something you can bring to the table. You just have to be patient and look for it. And when you find it, keep using it as much as you can because you know that's something we need. So we will find that in you. I promise. That's my job to help you pull that out and say, oh, here's what you're going to be good at. Oh, this is what you're going to be. You can help us with this. And so I want you to understand, though, we're not judging each other in here. We are here to support each other on our shared mission, just like a great football team does. They have different positions and different, they have the offense, the defense, the special teams. They have, they come out and they play different parts of the game when those parts come up. And so, but it's the strengths that make them strong. And if you look, those teams are very diverse, okay? And so our classroom, I want us to learn to not just accept that diversity, but to appreciate it because it's going to make us a stronger team in this classroom this year to achieve our mission. So, and again, that's all involved. It gets people feeling like, oh man, I belong in this room. We don't just accept it, we appreciate that. And so it helps a lot. And then also I tell them expectation is do your best. Your job is to basically, I tell them, is to help others do their best while you strive each day to do your best. Nobody's trying to be perfect. If people make mistakes, that's what the team comes in. We help each other, pick them up, say, you can do it again, try again. I'm rooting for you. Maybe try this differently. So don't be negative. And when people are trying to help you, accept the help and be willing to give help when you see somebody else needing help. But if you can do that, if you can do your best and help others do their best, I guarantee you we are going to have something so special in here that you can't help but not have your best year ever or one of your best years ever. And so that's another expectation. Well, let's talk about brotherhood just for a second. I'll come back to accountability again because I'm going to tie in a couple things. Now, brotherhood we've talked about the importance of brotherhood. Brotherhood is a sense of belonging. I want everybody all involved to feel involved. Parents, I did 4 episodes on how you can get your parents involved, right? Team building, that was one of the early episodes, how you can start building your class into a team so they start interacting with each other and working with each other. But again, if you only do that you're never going to have a winning team. That's just to break down the walls, the barriers to get them started, right? And so, but there's other things I do to help build that brotherhood or sense of belonging that the CDC recommends is so important as well. And that is, I create learning teams in my classroom where I have kids sit together at tables. Instead of sitting in rows, I move the desks into, like 4 desks facing each other or one on the end. So it's 5 desks, depending on how the makeup of the room is. And I keep those kids in a group for about 1 to 2 months. And then I move the teams. I break them up and move them next to new people because I want them to get used to working with many different people in the room and not just the same group all year long. And I try to keep best friends from best friends because, it's not about cliques. It's about working with new people. And I always tell them, my expectation is that you can work well with each other here at work. right? You don't have to be best friends outside of school. I'm not saying we all have to go out to the malt shop together and skip down and hold hands and go, we love each other. We're so great. I'm not asking for that necessarily. If you want to be friends outside of school, and I think many of you will become friends, and I know they have, because some of them are in their 40s now and are still friends with some of those students that were in the same class together. Year after year, I saw that happening. But my point is that I want you to be able to work well together. Okay, I shouldn't be able to tell who's friends and not friends in this room. If you're working with somebody, I shouldn't be able to tell if you like each other or don't like each other. I should see that you both work well together. And if you like them, it makes it a lot easier. So why don't you just accept people again and take them, just try to like them. Because when you like somebody, it's easier to care about them. And when you care about them, we're all going to succeed because we all want to be cared for in this room. So that's the brotherhood part, by having them work in teams. And then within the team, I have them work with learning partners. And each learning partner helps each other out in that group. And if their learning partner's absent or out of the room, then somebody else will fill in and help that person if they need it. But I always want them to feel like they have support right there at their table, like that Marine that said, no matter, what the situation, I can come to your aid. I want them to be right there next to the person. They can help them if they. So I try to set up teams where it's somebody that needs struggles maybe is sitting next to somebody who's very strong, so they can help each other out. Or that person, it's not two people that are struggling trying to help each other out. Maybe it's just getting worse. And so I try to be careful how I do that to not make anything look obvious. But I do, I strategically try to set that up so it works for the best. And then what we do is we do daily practice in my classroom every day of teamwork. How? I use a ton of cooperative learning strategies. And I'll just list off some of the ones that were my favorites, like round robin, rally robin, turn and tell, think, pair, share, inside, outside circles was my favorite. Jigsaw. There's so many other ones, but I'm not going to go into these because you can read about some of them in the book a little bit. I might mention them, but I don't want to take anything out of their book. I want you to go out and look for Spencer Kagan's cooperative learning books. If you go and look at them, or even online, you're going to see they have all these amazing strategies where kids all the time are working together. And what does that do? It keeps one kid from sitting there zoning out or messing around, because everybody on his team knows, or who he's paired up with or working with, they know you need everybody to move the exercise forward or the assignment forward. And so everybody is held accountable. So there's that word accountable, while building that brotherhood or that sense of team even stronger on a daily basis. Now, not every single subject, not every single lesson is like that, but every day you can count on at least 2 or 3 times we're going to be interacting and engaging with each other for 20 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, depending on what they're working on. I did lots of skits, group projects, public service announcements that we'd videotape. We had a game called Panel of Experts where I broke up the learning teams, and they each got, we had to review a topic before a big test, and like in social studies, and they could write down any review questions they wanted and try to find the hardest questions to stump the other teams when we played the game. And then you have to make sure you teach everybody in your group as much information as you can in the reviews, so that when they're quizzed, if they get asked a question, they can go, I know this. Yep. And so they can jump in. You want to set your room up with as many of these team building games as you possibly can to build that sense of team. Team celebrations is really big. But before I do team celebrations, let me back up 1 second. I'm going to talk about, again, accountability and that brotherhood. So what I would do is, winning teams have to keep score. I'm sorry, they do. They have to compete. They have to be going against something, or they have to try to beat something, or they have to have a score, a time, something to beat. Because why would you even go to a soccer game to watch a soccer game if nobody kept score? Or a basketball game, nobody kept score. Or a football game, the Super Bowl, nobody's keeping score. So there's no winners or losers or score. They're just running plays back. It'd be boring to play, and it'd be boring to watch, right? I have to find something to get my kids to compete against. And I don't want them competing against each other. And I don't want them competing against other classrooms like, we're best year ever. We're better than everybody else here. I don't want that. So what I did was I created team challenges. And a lot of these are mentioned in my book. But for example, they had to work together to try to earn certain things. I talked about hallway compliments before, that if they could walk down the hallway and get a compliment, 1 per day, they could get 10 extra minutes of recess. So they'd get excited. So we just got a compliment, right? And so I started keeping track of those on the board. And then what would happen is I would leave that number up until another class could beat that number. And then I sometimes would even throw in a challenge of, I'll even give you a pizza party if you can, when it got really big numbers, because it went from 47 to like 130 or something, that they were trying to beat in the later years that I was still teaching. And that's a big number to keep them focused all year long. So I'd throw that pizza party in there and they'd get excited. But that was a challenge, but also accountability, because if one kid messes up, they may not get that compliment. Right? So they encourage each other. Remember, they look out for each other. Hey, Jimmy, stop doing that, right? Okay, look forward, good job. All right, Jimmy, we're going to do this. We're going to get a compliment today. Whatever. And so I also did things like if they went the whole week without getting a check on the board. A check was when I felt, individuals might get a warning, but a check was a class warning when I felt the class wasn't working well as a team and they were being disruptive to moving us forward in our day. And so sometimes I'd give them a verbal warning, and then I'd go up and put a check on the board. If I got 2 checks, they'd miss a full recess. And so they knew, they didn't want to miss recess. But I wanted them to earn something, too, for not getting the checks. So if they could go the whole week without 1 check on the board, the whole team working together, they'd get a gum day on Friday, which they love, okay? Or they could bring in, a candy that they like to eat during the last hour. Team awards. Again, if they got glowing reports from, like, for example, the guest teacher or the substitute teacher whenever I was gone, which was rare, but when I was gone, if they came back and said, this is one of the best classes I worked with, they did this and this, I would give them something called a team award, and I'd put it on the wall, and we would keep track of those, and they were trying to beat a number from another team that had their number written somewhere up in the room that they knew that they're trying to get 3 more to beat that team's record. So instead of goofing off on sub days, they were working together, my leaders especially stepping up going, no, we were trying to earn that report. Come on, we want to get another award. And so I would put them up in the back room and make a huge deal out of it. And so that was cool. And that was accountability and brotherhood there and celebration. If nobody was absent the entire week, including myself, I'd give them an extra 10 minutes on Friday. So these are things they could earn. And there's more of those, but these are things they could work on throughout the year and try to collectively be working together. There are individual things, like if you go the month without getting your name on the behavior report pad, then you get a starred report. So that's individually you can work towards something. But I did more team challenges than individual having people stand out individually because I wanted it to truly be a team. And so I want to keep everybody involved and feel like, I don't have favorites or things like that. Okay, I'm zipping through this, but I only got a little bit more to talk about. So the last thing I'm going to talk about with you today is, I think of the student, right? All involved. I went individual students, and that's what I said with the cooperative learning and things like, for example, we had names name sticks in a cup. I'd pull them out and call your name, and you had to answer a question, so it made you have to pay attention, right? So that was for individuals to keep them accountable. Team. I just talked about how you can keep the team. They had learning teams. They had these team challenges. Sometimes when we would do like that review game, panel of experts, they would be group against group against group. So they were competing for whatever that was. And so that was fun, but it was never at the point of where we'd have to stop the game because it was starting to hurt our team overall. I would tell them that, and they knew that, and they wanted to have fun with it. And so that was something that was an expectation as well. And that's how they held themselves accountable. But what I want to talk about is the third one. And the third one is somewhere after the first 2 months of school and they really start to bond as a team, I want to start talking about leadership. And leadership, I'll never forget this. I was at NASA one summer, and I was at the space camp the year that I served as Michigan Teacher of the Year that summer. And I remember one of the NASA first rocket scientists that helped with the very first rockets was there to speak to us. And halfway through his presentation, he just all of a sudden broke and did a bird walk, like Penny Owen did that time in her class, and said, "Don't be glib," right? This guy he stopped talking, he looked at us, and he said, "You guys are teachers, right?" And we said, "Yeah." And he says, "What grades?" And we said, "Anywhere from K to high school." And he goes, "You guys, do me a favor. Go back and teach leadership, because right now this was back in 2004, right? Teach leadership, because right now we're hurting for leaders in this country. And so please go back and teach leadership." I'll never forget that. And so I really took up my game to find new ways to encourage my students to become leaders. And fifth graders in a 5-6 building, they were the youngest students. I wanted them to be leaders, and I would start putting pressure on them. Not tough pressure, but, challenging them to say, "Hey, guys, you guys get a lot of hallway compliments. Guys, you do so many nice things, and you're starting to be recognized. Winning teams attract fans. I think you're starting to, but I don't want it to go to your head. I want you to rise to this occasion and become leaders in the building, to model the way for other people without saying, 'Hey, do it this way like we do it.' Just do it. Just model the way." And so I would talk about different situations where they could actually start to be leaders, and again, to keep them all involved, and also to extend that brotherhood outside of our classroom to make other people feel connected to us as well. For example, the support staff in the building, my kids were taught to go in and say please and thank you. A lot of kids don't do that. They just grab something and they go, or whatever I need, and they leave. No, it's always please and thank yous. Go out of your way to say that, and it will mean so much to them. I guarantee it. They do it in the lunch aids. They would do it to the bus driver. We made Christmas cards for the bus drivers one year to thank them for their work. So we helped the custodians set up chairs or take down chairs at the end of an assembly assembly. We'd always offer that help. And so my point is, we went out of our way to start showing leadership outside of our classroom. If you see a kid sitting alone in the lunchroom and he's not in our class, go up and ask that kid if you guys can sit with that kid. Take a friend with you if you know, well, I like sitting with my friends, and invite that friend to come sit with you guys for a lunch. For one lunch, you could give up maybe not sitting with your friends to help another kid not feel lonely in this building. So they would go out of their way to make these connections, and other adults would notice it and go, your students are amazing. They're reaching out to kids that eat alone or are playing alone on the playground, or they're helping, they're doing this. You can always tell your kids, Miss Cecil, they're so polite and they're so helpful. It's because we talked about it. We made it something worth aiming for, and making our team part of our mission to make it the best year ever is to be leaders outside the classroom, right? So this is something that you can really be thinking about over this coming summer, or whenever you start this. But start, not right away. That'd be too much to throw in the first 2 months, like I said, maybe, especially when they're the younger of the two grades in my building. But the point is, as they started to really become a team, I wanted them to keep growing as a team and challenging them higher and higher and higher so that they would play at a higher level. Okay, so last thing I want to do. This morning, this is so crazy. I was reading a book, rereading a book that's one of my favorites. It's called Leading with the Heart by Coach K. Krzyzewski, and from Duke. And he's a Hall of Fame, 5-time national champion winner for the coach of the Duke team, and also 6-time gold medalist, head coach for the U.S. men's national team. And there's a quote I was reading from his book today that just jumped out at me, and this is what it said. It said, people want to be on a team. They want to be a part of something larger than themselves. They want to be in a situation where they feel they are doing something for the greater good. That's what Best Year Ever is all about. Making them feel a part of something larger than themselves. The power of team. I talked about this. This is why I got chills when I was seeing this, when I was reading this morning. I'm like, I got to do this episode today because I want to get this out of me. It's so important. This is a guy who won national championships and national titles or whatever for the national team, the gold medals, and just amazing coach. And he's telling us the importance of this, right? And then he also talks about something about tradition. He talked about tradition. I want to talk about this for a second. How he tells his players, once you're part of Duke's basketball program, you're always a part of Duke's program. No matter how many years pass, you are always a part of this. You're part of the legacy. You're part of us. And so it's the tradition we all want to live up to. He tells his team, we want to live up. We don't want to do anything to embarrass this team or embarrass ourselves or embarrass our families. And that's something I would talk to my kids about. Don't embarrass this team. This is a best year ever team, year after year after year after year. I've never not had my best year ever. I know you guys can do it too. That's why I know, because I've seen it work so many other times. And sometimes I just say, guys, are we embarrassing ourselves today as a team? If one of our former players came in to see how we're doing, would they be shocked that this was my classroom, or would they be proud? And I would have former students come in from years of, they'd be high school and they have a day off, they'd come visit. And I would always stop and I'd say, we're going to stop whenever we have one of my former students come by, because I want them to get up in front of the room and talk to you guys about what it's like to be on this team and what do they remember. And it was worth gold, because they would say, I still got my coin. Mr. Cecil taught me the importance of attendance, attitude, effort, and working together with people. And oh my gosh, guys, you're so lucky to have it. Would just, it would just get them more energized. And so I had their pictures hanging them on this one bulletin board, and they'd stay years after they left, and they'd come in and find their pictures. Why? Because like I told them on the first day of school, I tell every group, once you're on my team, you're always on my team. And that includes even when you're out of school. And I still have people that are now in their 30s, 40s, that when we talk, they know that we're still connected. Best Year Ever is still our connection, right? We're still on the same team. So think about these things. Think about the importance of what you're doing with all involved, okay? And again, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And please keep doing it, and please keep sharing this out with others so we can get more people building this connection in our schools, like the CDC is begging us to do, or says will be so healthy for our kids and so much better for their learning and for their lives. So I hope you'll do that. So until next time, please remember, best year ever. You have the power to make it happen.